Hey guys, Jerry here back with you talking about these S-type headlights, which I know is such a fun topic for all of you. This is not going to be an exhaustive video. Think of this just as a quick overview as to some of the issues that a lot of us have come into with these headlamps, the design of them. And I'll give you some basic points and tips and kind of show you the inside of what these things look like and give you an idea as to what you're working with. This specific unit came out of a 2005 S-type, which came equipped with the factory HIDs. I'm currently in the process of retrofitting an HID kit in my 2002, which is a separate discussion, but right now I run LEDs in both the high beam and the low beam, as well as the rest of the indicators, the signal, blinker indicator, parking light, things like that. So when I first pulled these from the junkyard, I noticed immediately that the previous owner had the droopy headlight issue, and that was a dead giveaway because of the hole that they had screwed a screw in from the front end to the back to pin the internal reflector housing and projector housing to the back of the assembly unit here, this outer shell. Okay. That's a quick and dirty way of fixing the droopy headlight issue. It's not the greatest way in the world to do it. It works. But if you want to permanently fix it, I would advise to kind of taking the lights out and doing it the hard way. This is great for I would consider this to be an emergency roadside repair type of thing, right? I mean, you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and you need to have your lights, and you need them to be not pointing at the ground. That's kind of a great way to get ahead of it. But ultimately, if you want to fix them permanently and make sure that they're level on both sides of the car and easily adjustable, you have to actually open these up. This lens portion, this plastic lens portion, is attached to the rear shell, or the housing as they call it, with just gobs of tar or, like butyl glue or whatever they call it, that basically seals these things together. So in order to get these apart, you have to bake them open. You can do either one of two things. You can use a heat gun and kind of go inch by inch and pull these apart. It's easy to permanently warp some of these plastics doing that. So you have to be very careful when you do that. Also, this black stuff gets very hot, so it's very easy to burn yourself. You can also bake them open, which literally involves putting them into the oven for a certain amount of time at a certain temperature. I don't know off the top of my head. Or sometimes what people will do is they'll put them in a cardboard box and they'll stick a heat gun into the cardboard box and kind of let the box heat the headlamp up so they can pull it apart. There's a bunch of different ways of doing this. But ultimately, the goal is once you get these out of the car, which is an ordeal in itself, which we'll talk about later, is to at least separate these pieces so you can get to the internals of the housing. So once you bake these open, this front lens part will come off. Now, I've already torn this apart, so some pieces might go flying here, so just bear with me. This stuff is so sticky, it's already starting to stick back into place. When I say I've already torn this apart, also, I've already taken the ballast off of the back for the original factory HID unit. And I've also removed the caps, as you can see. So there is a silver box that sits here that I have on my workbench that powers the HID unit itself. We'll talk more about that, at a later time, maybe in a separate video. So this front lens comes off, in theory. There we go. Try and do this without dropping it. There we go. And inside the housing, you now have what I'm calling, or what I'm just referring to as, the assembly, or the reflector projector assembly. This piece is what droops down inside the housing and gives you that kind of droopy headlight issue. This piece is not physically connected to the shell or rear housing of the headlamp in any major way. There's only 3 connecting points. So what ends up happening is when the headlights droop, This specific piece right here, this adjuster back here, snaps. And as you can see, it's already happened on mine. What ends up happening is that when that snaps, this whole housing ends up just pointing down, and you illuminate the ground in front of you, which was what your fog lights are supposed to do versus your headlamp. So by what the previous owner did by drilling that screw directly through the lens assembly right through the front is they pinned this back up so that they could at least get to where they needed to go. But aside from this point, there's only two other points where this assembly is connected to the rear housing. There's a point here, and there's a point here. So you have 1, 2, 3. That's true on both the halogen and the HID models. On the halogen model, you don't have a projector lens, you have just another reflector lens like this, but conceptually, they're connected to the rear shell housing the same way. This was a design by Hella. They're out of Germany, and I'd love to slam the guy's nuts in a mailbox, whoever designed this, because it's just really not, it's very frustrating to work with. So over time, the plastics, like everything else on this car, gets very brittle, and these connecting points snap. This first point here controls the pitch, the up and down pitch of where the headlight is aimed as you're driving down the road. The droopy headlights thing, as I mentioned, happens because this part back here snaps. This back part here connects on the top of the headlamp to the adjuster here. And that's how you control the up and down pitch and the adjustment of the pitch of your headlamp without taking this out of the car. As you can twist that nut left or right, and in turn, it will push this specific piece in the back here in and out, which will then push this piece up and down. And I'll show you that in a second in more detail. The second place these are connected is down here. There's another connecting point in the back that varies based on whether you have projector headlamps or you have reflector headlamps. The projector headlamps have a motorized version of this screw assembly, if you will, that acts with the auto leveling system of the car. So in order to keep from shining light in people's eyes when you're driving down the road, the car senses the ride height of essentially where the front and rear ends are sitting in the car. So if it's level or if it's tilted up, tilted down. The connecting point behind here will then adjust itself automatically in and out based on what it senses your ride height is. And again, kind of like what the manual adjustment does up here, but it just does it automatically, is it will move these headlamps, this headlamp assembly up and down so that you're not unnecessarily blinding people. In the halogen versions, which don't have HIDs or this projector lamp, they just have a reflector, it's a simple metal bar that just sits here because there's no need to adjust them up and down. In all of the retrofits or the retro mods that I've done, I've removed that auto leveling function and just put a reflector version in there, which is just a metal bar instead. It's not plastic, it's metal. And because of the internal shielding on the projector, I've never felt the need to retrofit an auto leveling system. Plus, it's really difficult to do. So that's the second connecting point. The third connecting point, which can also break, is back here. Sitting back behind here, which I'll show you as I take this out, there's another pin or connecting point, just like there is here. Only this one controls the left and right direction of the lamp. So instead of going up and down like these two connecting points do, it controls kind of what angle these shine from the front of your car. From what I've seen, these don't break nearly as much as these break. I don't know why that is. They're made out of the same type of plastic, but for whatever reason, these like to break more. So whether your all points are broken or you've already kind of disconnected them from the headlamp, this whole unit comes out. I've also unscrewed this, so if this comes flying out, don't be surprised. Okay, so this comes out. We're going to put this guy aside for a second. And now that we're in here, you can see more of what I'm talking about. This is the piece that breaks that causes your droopy headlamps. You can see it snapped clean off here and couldn't connect to the back of that headlamp anymore. Down here is where this power adjustment is for the HID lamps. In fact, let me give you a better shot of that. That guy looks like this. It's a motorized pin, and this goes in and out based on the ride height of the car. Okay. Again, the halogen reflector style lamps do not have one of these. This is literally just a plug on the end with a metal bar here that replaces this whole motorized unit. That's what I prefer to use. I don't feel the need to use the self-leveling unit. That's a European Union thing. Cars in the United States don't require auto-leveling lamps on HIDs. They do in the European Union, which is why they put this system in. But if you're in the States, like I am, and you don't want to retrofit the auto-leveling system, which is very difficult to do, you can essentially skip this part and get yourself, the tear apart a halogen reflecting lamp and put that in, and you'll be perfectly fine. So on the front here, we've got those 3 connecting points just like I talked about. The bottom one, which I just showed you, this guy right here, and then over here, you've got this black piece here, which is the 3rd connecting point, and this is what controls that left and right direction of which I was just explaining to you earlier. The plastic, it's a different plastic. The color's different. It's black versus white, which is maybe why this doesn't break nearly as often. That's the only hypothesis I have. I'm not an expert in plastics, so I can't really explain why that piece doesn't fail nearly as much as this piece. But that's kind of a general idea of of the 3 connecting points of where that housing sits inside here. So aside from this point here, and this point here, there's no other way that housing connects to this outer shell of the headlamp. So when any one of these parts fail, you immediately get either a drooping issue or you get the bouncing issue where the headlamp will bounce as you go over bumps and things. So there really isn't a robust way for this thing to stay connected inside of this plastic outer housing or outer shell, if you will, which is why we have problems. Now, going back to our reflector unit here, our reflector projecting unit, you can also remove this projector, which I've already done, so I'm just going to pull this off. Okay, put him aside. On the back here are those 3 points. This is where the unit attaches here. This is where the unit attaches here, and this is where the unit attaches here. So again, you've got your vertical pitch up and down, you've got your motorized pitch up and down, or your stagnant pitch up and down, depending on whether you have HIDs or reflectors or halogen reflectors, respectively. And then you have your left and right aiming here, which is where this goes in. So on the end of this, which broke, would be something similar to what this looks like. Okay, just it was white in color and not black, but essentially the way that these connect to the reflector assembly is all the same. There's a ball on the end of a piece of plastic, and that plastic ball snaps into here, or in this case, it slides in at the end. And that's essentially how this reflector housing unit is connected inside of here. So you can see how that's kind of flimsy, and if one piece breaks, it's pretty detrimental to the way that the headlamp functions. If you want to tear it down even more, you can take the projector assembly out, which is what I've done here. Over time, the lens itself will get covered in almost like a film, like a road film, just from, miles and miles and years of use. So whenever I pull these apart, I like to take these apart and rinse them and then clean them very, very, very carefully with some lens cleaner, something that's not abrasive, that's very soft, so you don't scratch this. As you can see in there, there's our HID bulb and our internal shield, which gives us that nice crisp line when you're, driving down the road. The eBay kit, which I'll link in the description, which provides you with new pieces, replaces This piece, the rear adjustment screw that's here, as well as I believe there are kits that will replace this as well, the rear adjustment screw there. They do not sell replacement motors like this. Well, they do, but you're gonna have, they don't sell like replacement fix kits for these motors back here. You either have to source that from like a junkyard or something, or I'm sure you can pay a pretty penny and buy it directly from Jaguar. But those have such a low failure point that I seriously wouldn't be worried about it. If that ends up failing, it's probably going to be because one of these brittle plastic snaps. And when I say these are brittle, I mean these are brittle. I can snap this if I really want to with my hands. So the eBay kit that you buy, at a minimum, will have a replacement piece for here. Likely have a replacement piece for here, and the accompanying gears and adjustment points on the back that you can replace this with. So what you do is you take this guy and you pull him out, and then you put the new piece in, which is, I don't know if they 3D print them or if they manufacture them, but it's made of a much more robust plastic that hopefully doesn't break over a period of time, and then which will snap into this specific piece here. You know, just like that ball on the end of the adjuster I showed you, it's the same way it pops into here. Be forewarned, these break too. These attachment points can break. They're just plastic, and if I zoom in here real close, you can see that it's just a piece of plastic with 4 relief points to allow you to pop in that plastic ball permanently. Taking it out is kind of difficult, and it's just held in with one screw, one Torx head screw, or star head screw, excuse me. So if these break, I have yet to find a place online that will sell you these replacement pieces. You're going to have to source those from either a junkyard, or you might be able to find them online. But the replacement kits I've seen so far only sell the replacement adjuster knob, since that's what seems to break the most. So that's just an overview of kind of how these things are constructed and put together. I'm going to be diving deeper into these as I go along my journey of replacing my low beams right now, which are LEDs to HIDs, because the LEDs just aren't providing enough output for me to be satisfied with night driving. I've also put LEDs in here, which I listed in the above post. The bulbs that I used, I've also done LEDs for the blinker as well as for the parking lamp as well. So I hope this video is helpful. There's going to be more to come, guys, and this is one of those fun things that when people ask me why are you so frustrated with your car, I say it's a Jaguar thing. You wouldn't understand, and this is one of those things. So more to come soon. Stay tuned.